Hello, welcome to the Moving Teacher. I'm Brian and I'll be your guide for today. Before we start today's episode, feel free to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube page, share, as well as go on Facebook to the Moving Teacher, and of course our website, themovingteacher.com, where we try to update the page daily as well as weekly with more information to help you to be more successful in the classroom. So today's topic will focus more on contract negotiation. So what is this and why does it matter? So I'm going to give you some tips and hopefully it helps out. So when you're interviewing with schools, your contract negotiations happens a lot there in the meeting. But before we get to that, here are some pointers before that meeting comes. First, look at yourself, such as what experience do you have in your degree? That's going to determine where you're going to be paid. When you're speaking with recruiters, look at contracts for multiple schools. A lot of recruiters work with many different schools, so don't feel they only work with a school. Look at how the contract is for each school. Read them carefully. Some might pay you more, some might pay you less. Usually K to 12 will pay you a lot more, but you're working more hours for more students. In higher education, you're probably working 20, maybe 30 hours a week, and you would be paid a little bit less, and sometimes maybe half. And again, this is going to determine on the country. I know in South Korea, in both cases, an educator in K to 12 and someone in higher education will start off around 2 to possibly 2.4 million. Some might get paid more because of working more days. In China, those in higher education would probably be paid around 8,000 to 12,000 RMB a month. And again, that's going to determine on a lot of factors. As well, K to 12 or the training centers, you'll probably make 20 to 30,000 RMB a month. Again, a lot of this information is going to determine on you and how your value is in the market. So when you're looking at contracts, look at them carefully. Look at the hours you're going to be working, the days, if there's any time off, and other things. Don't just rush into a contract and let that go. What you want to do is review and also look at other contracts. So try to find 2 or 3 schools that you might be interested in, as it helps narrow it down. Now comes the fun part. Once you've done your research, then you're prepared once you go into the interview. Typically, in the interview, that's when you'll be able to make contract demands and things of that nature. Now, don't go too aggressively, but don't go too soft. You're not going to get everything that you want, but the schools might give you some things that you might want. This can include housing, this might be certain days off, and things of that nature. So try to speak about this with the schools. Try to bring your value on up. So if the pay ranges in Korea 2 million or 2.1 to 2.4, and you have a master's, if you have a lot of experience, you're probably at that 2.4 million won. But now if you have no experience, you're probably going to be at that 2 million or maybe 2.1 million. But try. Don't be too over aggressively, because that might make some schools feel you might be a headache to work with, because they too are going to be picky on who they want, as you are going to be picky on the places that you want. A final thing before I do finish this video is location, and that's going to be a big factor. If you're going to work in the cities, there's going to be less resources such as Where if you're working in rural or country areas, they might treat you more because they might see that not much people go there, so they might be able to meet more of your demands, give a little bit more. In the city, it's kind of hard to get as much, but they will give you some stuff. And this is because in the cities, that's where everyone wants to work in. Everyone wants to be in the city. They want to be close to everything. But again, you might be living in the city, but then the cost of living is higher. And so then a lot of your funding does go away or your salary. Where if you're working in rural areas, you're actually saving more and they might pay you a little bit more than that of working in the city. Now, in my experience in working in Korea, in China, they have great transportation. So where I live, where I lived in the city in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, I had more resources uh, because the school cared for me. They gave me an assistant. Transportation was easier, so everyone had a scooter. It was more easier to get from one area to the other area, and the students were more willing to want to learn. Now, my experience working in the city in China, and again, it's going to be different to everyone. It's there was just too much people for the transportation. Uh, the cost of living was expensive. So some schools they will pay for your housing, or they might give you uh, an allowance, and that's again decided on how you want that to be. And so my experience working in the city in China, I was making less, and then with the cost of living, it made things worse. But when I was working in the countryside, I was actually saving more money and also having a lot more resources. So again, when you're looking at contract negotiation, it's gonna come down to what you want. But make sure that you're doing all the research because contracts are usually 10 months to a year, and you don't want to waste 10 months or a year of your life on somewhere you don't want to be. And again, if in most places they're gonna have great transportation. Again, when I was in China, when I was in the rural country area, if I want to get to Shanghai, Guangzhou, or wherever, it was easy. It was maybe 3 or 4 hours, not too bad. The same thing when I lived in Korea, lived in Incheon. If I want to get to Seoul, it's about 1 hour. So again, everything's gonna fluctuate. But when you're going for the contract, make sure you do your research first. Once you're in the interview, you ask for some demands, and then they'll be open to it, and that will make life better. So always be prepared. And hope you enjoy today's video, and see you on the next one.